Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Japan makes a concession on flights from Hong Kong. The vaccine pass becomes obsolete 10 months after it was introduced. And at least 16 people die in a massive fire that engulfed a Cambodian casino. Japan is allowing flights from Hong Kong to land at 3 more airports on condition that their passengers have not been to the mainland in the previous 7 days. But Hong Kong carriers are reducing services to Japan. Joanna Ho reports.
It's an uncertain time for many people who wish to visit Japan after Tokyo said Hong Kongers can only enter the country through 4 airports from tomorrow. But just 1 day before the restrictions take effect, the Japanese government added 3 more airports for arrivals from Hong Kong. There are New Chitose, Fukuoka, and Naha. However, there's one condition: the planes cannot carry passengers who have been to the mainland in the 7 days prior to their departure. Despite the concession, the SAR government is pressing Tokyo to withdraw all restrictions. Earlier today, Cathay Pacific said it would still be able to fly to all airports in Japan, but it has to reduce 20% of the flights in its planned schedule for next month. The city's flag carrier is canceling all flights to Nagoya and Fukuoka from tomorrow. Flights to Sapporo will be reduced from 7 to 5 per week, while some to Narita and Osaka will be scrapped on certain days. Meanwhile, all flights returning to Hong Kong from tomorrow and up to January 8th will take off as scheduled. But from January 9th, some flights will be cancelled or reduced. Cathay's budget carrier Hong Kong Express is slashing 41 flights from January 14th. But all flights to Japan between today and January 13th and those returning to Hong Kong next month will operate as normal. Hong Kong Airlines, meanwhile, said it will resume daily services to Okinawa from tomorrow. Flights to Sapporo will operate as normal in the next 2 days, and a reduced flight schedule will be adopted from Sunday. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
The vaccine pass has become history after being required for entry to various premises in the past 10 months. Health Secretary Lo Chung-mau defended the decision to cancel the scheme, despite saying the vaccination rate for toddlers and elderly people is not ideal. Massve reports.
It's just like it used to be before. People can finally walk into restaurants without having to show their vaccine pass QR code on the Leave Home Safe app. It's much more convenient, said this man who had breakfast at a Cha Chan Tang. This unvaccinated man said he can finally go to a restaurant after being unable to dine in over the last 10 months. Just 5 days ago, Health Secretary Lo Chung-mau said the vaccine pass won't be scrapped. He argued that the vaccination rates for toddlers and the elderly was not ideal and could put pressure on the healthcare system. Speaking on 2 radio shows this morning, Lo defended the decision to abandon the vaccine pass scheme, saying the government has been relaxing measures gradually in the past few months. But he remained concerned about the vaccination rates. Only 23% of toddlers up to the age of 2 have received at least 1 jab, while 64% of people aged 80 or above had 3 shots. Lo tried to ease fears that COVID cases will surge when the border with the mainland is reopened. He said the government will continue to provide residents with vaccines and medication. The government is considering whether all visitors should have the same number of jabs or drop the vaccination requirement completely. Currently, visitors from overseas have to be fully vaccinated, while people arriving from the mainland are exempt. Massve, HKIBC.
The United States has become the latest country to impose restrictions on travelers from China. From next week, everyone arriving on flights from the mainland must prove they are COVID negative. And the rule also applies to passengers from Hong Kong and Macau. With China set to reconnect with the world after nearly 3 years of lockdown, countries are taking steps to stem a possible influx of infected travelers. The United States announced that passengers from China, Hong Kong, and Macau must show a negative test result before boarding a US-bound flight. Both PCR and rapid antigen tests are accepted, but they must be conducted no more than 48 hours before departure. Those who previously contracted the virus are exempt, but must provide documentation of recovery. The rule applies to all passengers aged 2 and above, regardless of nationality and vaccination status. Travelers connecting through the US onward to further destinations are also covered. The requirement will take effect on January the 5th, 3 days before China's borders reopen. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the move was necessary due to the lack of adequate and transparent epidemiological and viral genomic sequence data being reported by China. Washington's decision followed a similar move by Italy, which became the first European nation to screen travelers from China on arrival. It proved to be effective after nearly half of the passengers on 2 flights from Beijing and Shanghai were found to be positive when they arrived in Milan on Monday. Those infected were sent to quarantine. But it remains unclear if the tests are mandatory. A travel advisory on the Italian Foreign Ministry's website said the measure at Milan's Malpensa airport is optional and will expire after January. Britain said it has no plans to follow suit, while France, Germany, and Australia are closely monitoring the situation and will make adjustments as necessary. Many people in Hong Kong and the mainland are waiting for the border to reopen. They are hoping to fulfill long-awaited dreams, such as reuniting with family and friends or going to a concert. Chloe Fong talked to some of them.
The government is remaining tight-lipped on when the border with the mainland will reopen. But mainlanders in Hong Kong are already making their Lunar New Year plans.
I haven't spent Spring Festival with my family for 3 years, and I definitely want to go back to spend quality time with my families and to meet up with all my friends.
Originally from Hebei province, Xie went back twice during the pandemic, but spent 28 days in quarantine each time, an experience she described as insane. She welcomed China's decision to end quarantine for arrivals from January the 8th, but remains concerned.
Because the cases in my hometown and the situation is still very serious, and I haven't caught COVID yet, so I'm still thinking about it. I don't know if there will be any the quota limitations for going back to mainland or vice versa.
Xie also fears that airfares will be exorbitant. Banker Chris Dong is excited and has earmarked the Lunar New Year next month to return home.
I just feel homesick and lack of secure. The reason I chose Hong Kong as my career development is because it is quite close to mainland China, so which is easier for me to travel back and forth during the weekend. But over the past 3 years, things just changed. My dad was badly ill last year, so I chose to go back last year. So that's why I didn't miss anything from my part. But I know 2 of my friends, they miss their funeral for their grandparents.
Dong is worried whether the city's PCR testing capacity can cope, as travelers will need to present a negative result obtained 48 hours before departure. Meanwhile, many people on the mainland plan to visit Hong Kong.
因为我其实很早就在计划着要去看演唱会。
I have long been hoping to watch a concert in Hong Kong, said Lin Yiqiao. The Hangzhou resident, who is still recovering from COVID, has snagged a ticket from an Eason Chen concert. I have never been to Hong Kong, but I have been listening to Hong Kong music since childhood, he said, hoping that he will fulfill his dream. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
Overseas, at least 16 people have been killed and 50 injured in a fire that gutted a Cambodian casino complex near the border with Thailand. The inferno at the Grand Diamond City Casino and Hotel in Poi Pot began in the early hours of this morning and was put out after 12 hours. Some people were seen falling from the top of the 12-story complex. Firefighters from Thailand helped their Cambodian peers put out the blaze. Many of the staff and patrons of the casino were from Thailand, where gambling is illegal. The cause of the inferno is not known. Fire chief said it took a long time to douse the flames because it was difficult for the equipment to reach the casino, where the blaze was at its most intense. And in South Korea, at least 5 people have been killed and dozens injured in a huge fire on a highway in Seoul. Footage circulating on social media showed a noise barrier engulfed in flames just before 2 p.m. Traffic was heavy on the busy expressway running through the capital, and many motorists were believed to have been trapped. Reports suggested the inferno was triggered by a collision between a bus and a truck, although authorities are still investigating. The Hong Kong stock market retreated today after the euphoria over China's reopening gave way to fears of a surge in COVID infections. The Hang Seng Index gave up 0.8%, pushing the benchmark towards a third straight year of losses. Tech heavyweight JD.com slumped 5.4%, with investors concerned about its performance. But it was a different picture for rival Tencent, which gained 2.8%. This came after China signaled the end of a crackdown on the tech sector by approving 45 foreign video games. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended down by 157 points. The top 10 active stocks, Tencent was up $9. Alibaba lost $2.15, while JD.com was down by $12.40. Kuaishou Technology was down by $2.45, while Ping An Insurance was down by 55 cents. The forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euros at 8.29, pound sterling 9.37, while the Australian dollar at 5.23. And finally, in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down by 8 points. At least 2 New York-listed Chinese firms have reportedly abandoned plans to float shares in Hong Kong. Sources identified them as e-commerce firm Pinduoduo and commercial freight company Food Truck Alliance. They were among mainland firms that were under threat of being delisted in a row over accounting practices. But the issue appears to have been solved after U.S. regulators said Beijing has allowed them to access the audits of Chinese stocks. New Yorkers have gathered in Times Square to say good riddance to 2022 and look forward to the new year.
In 2023, I'm trying to get rid of a lot of doubt that I had in 2022. I just want to enjoy life more, have more experiences, take a dance class without worrying if I'm going to be like Beyonce and be amazing and just have fun at it.
It's been a very negative couple years. I hope that 2023, of course, since COVID has gone down, it'll be better.
Hundreds of people took part in Good Riddance Day. They tore a piece of paper which listed their pet hates and then released their frustration. For those participating, next year can only be better. The head of the United Nations, meanwhile, delivered his New Year's message, stressing the need for peace.
In 2023, we need peace now more than ever. Peace with one another through dialogue to end conflict. Peace with nature and our climate to build a more sustainable world. In 2023, let's put peace at the heart of our words and actions. Together, let's make 2023 a year when peace is restored to our lives, our homes, and our world.
And finally, the weather. Tomorrow will be fine and dry, but cool in the morning and at night. The temperatures will range between 13 and 19 degrees. It will get warmer in the new year. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Good night.